Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Joining us here on the program today is Dr. Joe Gallenberger. He has more than 30 years of experience, as a therapist, and during that time has had a great interest in the universal principles of manifestation. So if you're somebody out there who's trying to achieve the life that you're looking for, the abundance that you crave, or just the simple successes of just everyday living, then this may be the show that you'll want to listen to see what you can do to take that very next step. In 1995, he began exploring psychokinesis as the ability to influence matter through non-physical means, and has achieved statistically powerful results in university laboratories, and after advancing his methods of over years of study, began to teach this skill to people who share his interest in the fundamentals of manifestation. I'm kind of curious about this myself, so I'd like to welcome to our program Dr. Joe Gallenberger. And Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How about you, Daniel?
Oh, a day above ground is a good day because it gives me the opportunity to manifest what I'm yearning for.
That's right.
Now, let's talk about what psychokinesis is and your experience with it.
Okay, well, psychokinesis, which we can shorten to the phrase PK, is really the ability to use our own energy and thought to influence physical matter reality without using any physical means. So, for example, bending metal or plastic using just your mind, or growing seeds in your hand, lighting light bulbs with your energy, and not using any physical means. And it seems to be the same power as used in energy healing. My experience with it goes over at least a decade and involves many things. I started with being able to throw dice in patterns that I clearly intended to throw, such as rolling 9 sevens in a row, for example. I think many of us have had some experience with that, playing Monopoly or backgammon, where we wanted to roll doubles or sixes or things. But it intrigued me because it seemed so powerful and repeatable. So I went over to a scientific laboratory, and they put me through a lot of different PK exercises that really proved to me that PK exists, and I wasn't just imagining the effect, and that I and most people can do it.
It seems interesting that when you bring that up, I remember as a kid, even as far back as I believe it was kindergarten, and here I'm playing this board game, and any time that there was a specific number I needed to move so that I'd have a positive outcome, I'd kind of wish for it or pray for it real intentionally in my mind, and interestingly enough, more often than not, I would get the number that I needed. And I kind of thought to myself, well, this is just too weird, it's kind of strange, but then a part of me was saying, no, I believe I can really do this because of the consistent results. This is something that all of us have an ability.
Yes, and I think you keyed in on something important. Often children do it better than adults because they're just less filled with belief systems that would say you can't.
Right.
And they can fire up their imagination and really feel that wide open hope and desire, which are really good fuel for this to happen. That's part of why it can be difficult in a laboratory, is with all the scientists watching and cameras and all of that tension. It's very different than that state of having fun when you were a kid at a board game and really being absorbed in that task. And the board game situation is ideal to generate the psychokinesis. The laboratory is not.
Now, as people approach you about psychokinesis, you kind of can go back to the days of, say, the 50s and 60s, and probably even before that as they were studying this, and you'd see people being able to move objects mentally, but that's not really what we're talking about here. This is something a little bit different, or is it the same thing?
It can be the same thing.
Okay.
You have to be cautious, of course, because magicians can do many things by sleight of hand and with mirrors and things. And so some of the old seance behavior where you hear knocking or tables moving, they found some of that definitely was just induced by fraud. That doesn't rule out that some of it may have been genuine. But I tended to stick to things that any individual can do and be, for example, holding the metal object in their hand and see it bend and be a metal object that they chose so that they know that there's not been any fraud or sleight of hand. And that's what really profoundly changes your belief system of what you can do.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were talking earlier about one of the things that you started to do was by throwing dice, and you could roll, for instance, as you said, about 9 sevens in a row just by intending it.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other experiments that you did that in psychokinesis that really started to root it to be a very viable way that people can create for themselves?
Yes, actually the first experiment in the lab I thought was pretty sexy the way they had it designed. They had a height of water in a column, just like a fountain, and they had all kinds of pretty lights reflecting off of the water, so it was kind of gorgeous looking. And the height of a fountain changes height by random hydrodynamic law. It just kind of goes up and down, unquote, its own on a random basis. And in that experiment, I was instructed to make the column height of the fountain higher for about 15 minutes, and then make it lower for 15, and leave it alone for 15. That would be the control time. And so as I approached that, raising my energy through breathing, through opening my heart, visualizing how neat this would be to succeed, then I just imagined kind of supporting that column of water by a cylinder of energy, if you will, and indeed the column went higher. And then and at the point where I was instructed to do lower, I imagined like energy coming, shooting out my hands like a sword, cutting the water, right, slicing right through the column, and the column kept breaking and going down. And so it came out lower. And when we did the statistics, it was highly significant, so that it wouldn't happen by chance, and only would happen through psychokinesis. That was kind of fun. And the next one they had that was also kind of cool was taking the pixels or dots of two different pictures and mixing them in a computer, like heads would be dots from one picture and tails would be the other. And so on the screen you would just see mush, and the two pictures they chose was a kitty cat and a pyramid. Mm-hmm. And you could kind of get all excited, look at the screen and go, here, kitty, 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 and really bring out that picture just with your mind, causing the computer to be picking pixels only from that picture, and it getting clearer and clearer until it locked in, and you could make it out to be the cat that it was. And that was kind of fun, and it also struck me as highly interesting because the same type of random number generators, they were picking the ones and zeros in that experiment, are present in slot machines. And so theoretically you could say cherries, 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 if that was the jackpot on a slot machine, and cause that to trigger as well. And indeed that's what we found a lot of times. You can do that.
Wow, so you might be able to take this to Vegas and see yourself hitting the slots quite well.
Yes, in fact, I've just come back 2 days ago from a Vegas adventure, which is a workshop that I give, and we had a lot of fun. They have new slot machines out there really appealing to people's imaginations, like one based on the Wizard of Oz, just a penny machine. But to see the wizard and go through the yellow brick road and do all of that, you have to win. And so even more than the pennies, you really want to see what the wizard looks like and participate, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's an ideal situation for that psychokinesis to manifest. So I was able to see the wizard on the third pull and then go to a machine that had wolves and all kinds of interesting nature scenes coming along if you win. And on second pull on that machine, you got to see the wolves. Mm-hmm. And coincidentally, you win some money.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dr. Gallenberger, is that you bring up an interesting point about success. And, there are a slew of books out there that, share secrets or steps toward manifesting success, whether it be money, whether it be love, whether it be career. It's all pretty much the same thing. You're really just pursuing individual happiness at one level or another. And one of the more consistent messages that you tend to see in books like that, and I can even go back as far as Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, is the idea of focus, that you focus on what it is that you want, you have a clear picture in your mind of what that is, and then therefore you'll be able to manifest it. Yet too many people will buy these books, or they'll take courses or seminars, and yet they find themselves falling short on a fairly regular basis and frustrated. Yeah. Do you think it has everything to do with belief systems that could be blocking that telekinetic focus? Is that what telekinesis can be considered to be?
Well, I think several things happen to conspire against that working so easily, if you will. Yes, focusing and visualizing what you want is an excellent tool. But what I've found is you are correct that often there will be belief systems that are countering what you're trying to focus on. And that's number one. And number two is that it really goes better if you generate a very high energy of gratitude, abundance already. And that can be hard when, say, you've been out of work for 6 months and what you're wanting is a job, to feel all bright and cheerful about
Isn't that the truth?
Right. And it has to be genuine. So there's ways around that. The concept idea first, comes in. I knew a fellow once a time who wanted a job, and he wasn't having much luck. And we said, well, what would you really like? And he said, a job about 2 months a year, out in pretty weather, blah, 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 blah. And, he put that out and put it out in the correct energy, and he got it. But for most people, if you said a job, it doesn't equal 2 months a year. Right there, the concept of job would get in the way. So if you can bypass that and say if you're out of work for 6 months, you might think of all the other ways your abundance, the abundance of books in your life, friends in your life, good health, hopefully, and many other things. So you feel very whole, abundant, taken care of, grateful for what you do have, and then the job becomes more the cherry on top of the cake, or on top of the sundae. And so you've bypassed that feeling of lack you might naturally have from being out of work. And there's more tools like that go even deeper, using meditative techniques to really ease away those feelings of lack and guilt and really.
Now, you've also had some other experiences with psychokinesis. Could you talk a little bit about those, and then we'll kind of go into what it is that you present that help people?
There's a number of things that I'm trying to think of which I would like to talk about. It is the same energy as healing energy, and so I guess some of my most delightful things have been to be witness to someone applying the psychokinetic energy and seeing a health issue shift rapidly, and maybe even instantly. So somebody with nails that are all yellowed with fungus waking up the next day with completely clear nails, or somebody that cannot hear well being able to hear again. But I have one in mind, I guess it's popping in for me, that was beyond what I thought was possible. I was working with metal bending, and my co-trainer in a workshop had just bent the bowl of a spoon, which is a very difficult or challenging part of the spoon to get to bend. Holding on to it very proudly and tightly at the edge of the circle, and I was in the middle of the circle, probably 15 feet from her. I was frankly a little bit envious. I would have loved to bend the bowl too. So I was thinking, gee, I'd like one. And I said to her, please show the group your spoon, take a tour and everybody can clap for you. And when I said that, she goes, it's gone. And it just left her hand. She looked all around, couldn't find it. And then I felt something. I looked in my pocket, and there it was. So I got a case of what I would call teleportation, where the spoon dematerialized over there and came over here. I have not been able to repeat that, and frankly not seen anybody else do it. I imagine people have. I've heard reports of that, where somebody loses a ring or something stolen in a robbery, and it's their grandmother's ring, and they really want it back, and they apply lots of energy, and it appears on their nightstand the next day. So that's kind of far out there where you can teleport things.
Very interesting. Very interesting. It kind of goes to show, too, when people take a look at the possibility of psychokinesis, and when you talk about bending spoons or the idea of teleporting objects from point A to point B, and you'll tend to have cynics, well, that's just not possible. those might even be the same people who are desperately out there looking for those ways that they can manifest, and they just simply don't believe they can, and that's why their beliefs are true.
Yeah, and fortunately, there's quite a few steps one could take where you begin to prove to yourself that this might be real, and then prove to yourself that it is real, doing some things that 85% of people can do without, a heck of a lot of preparation. It may take a few hours of instruction and raising energy, but then they should be able to get back to that dice thing, for example, can be a pretty simple way. They may have a target. One time, a lady I was working with had a target of rolling 2 sixes on 2 dice, equaling 12, and she gave herself 10 chances, and she didn't hit that at all on those. It would only happen 1 in 36 times by chance. But what I observed is that she had rolled a 6 on one of the dice every single roll, and the odds of that were 125,000 to 1 by chance. So it began to give her a feeling like, maybe something's here, and gave her incentive to practice a little more. And it began seeing those 6s come at a rate where she said, something's happening. So when I teach courses, either my home study or in a workshop, I will go sequentially, take some things that are a little easier, and then move into growing seeds, which a lot of people find fascinating and fun to do, to lighting light bulbs, to bending metal, and kind of going up the scale of difficulty, if you will. And so somebody who, if they started with spoons, would go, this didn't work, and say it must all be fake, can get there.
Now, you have developed a program, and you also offer through Hemi-Sync, which can be part of it, but also separate from it, manifesting with Hemi-Sync. First, talk about quickly what Hemi-Sync is, and then the CDs that you have that are in line with the Hemi-Sync program.
Sure. Well, Hemi-Sync was developed by Robert Monroe. Many people know him as the fairly famous out-of-body traveler back into the 1970s. He really moved from his interest in that into a pioneer of exploring consciousness. And to do that, he experimented because he had already was quite familiar with sound laboratories, with using sounds put into each ear through headphones to help people relax and help people then move into other kinds of states of consciousness. So Hemi-Sync puts specialized tones, one in each ear, over stereo headphones, designed to bring you really into a whole brain learning state, where left and right brain are both firing at a higher rate and more focused and talking to each other better, if you will. And with that, then you can reach states of consciousness in minutes that could take people years to develop if they didn't have the Hemi-Sync. That could be deep relaxation, healing, insight, creativity, energy generation, connection with guidance. Lots of different altered states of consciousness are helped by the Hemi-Sync process. So part of what I have developed in my home study course called Sync Creation, from the word Hemi-Sync, is to develop customized CDs with this Hemi-Sync signal on it to do many of the things that I've mentioned, to help get rid of blocks of lack, guilt, and fear, to raise a really high, fine heart energy, to learn how to focus that, to visualize without any distractions and in a high energy state what you would like, even to be in an altered state listening to the Hemi-Sync and get instructions on how to bend metal, for example, and do it while you're listening to the CD. And so the manifestation course uses the Hemi-Sync quite heavily. It also uses this psychokinesis that we've been talking about because it gives you such quick feedback. If you went out looking for a soulmate, that may take years to find, and you might be wondering whether you're getting anywhere until all the synchronicities and everything arrange correctly to meet that person. If you're rolling dice, you know within 2 seconds of throwing the dice whether you did it and got the result that you wanted. So that quick feedback really is helpful in getting you more and more trust that, in fact, you're doing something and you know it's the results you wanted. So that's why we use psychokinesis in the Sync Creation Home Study course.
Now, as people have taken or become involved, I should say, in the Sync Creation course, what kind of outcomes have people experienced as far as their manifestation goals are concerned?
We've had many different kinds of things because people have very different goals.
Right.
Some do get the course particularly just to learn the psychokinesis. They want to be able to bend the metal and hold it in their hand and see that happen. And it's
always good for a nice campfire story as well.
So. Get a bar or something anyway. So we probably get about 85% results on that when somebody has a specific goal in the psychokinesis area. We've had lots of reports of enhancing career, going from being underpaid at a job that you don't like to something that you find really fascinating and that you do well at. Had one person get a job repairing microsurgical equipment and was able to use the psychokinesis to help him have the equipment repair itself, if you will.
Wow.
Teaches currency trading. Could see the number of the currency would end up at the end of the day, which comes in handy. So job enhancement. We've had a lot in healing of many different kinds of things. And I do want to say healing's an interesting area. It's got a mystery component. Sometimes the illnesses don't go away. And can't promise because we don't know the purpose of the illness, a whole bunch of other things that are going on. But sometimes people get very quick results, even if they've been struggling for years. So healing, relationships, career, and then financial abundance probably are the main things people know.
It seems reasonable. That's what a lot of the so-called self-help books out there tend to usually tout. It's usually money, career, and love. Those three things that seem to be the triangle that keep us happy.
And I'm with you. I've read from Power of Positive Thinking all the way through the Think and Grow Rich, and they didn't quite seem to do it. And,
right.
And then you end up feeling like untalented or undeserving or something, and that's a disservice because we're all very worthy and we're all deserving. But it just takes more. It takes really aligning your energy, which can be a challenge, and learning how to focus it and project it and seeing some positive results so you can build confidence. And in that case,
it's interesting, Dr. Gallenberger, that you bring that up because I was talking with a hypnotherapist actually about 2 months ago, and I was interested in it to see, how would this help? And how he does it is quite different from, say, mainstream hypnotherapy. As he says, he likes to get to the heart of the matter, and he says, you can go out there and you can read all the self-help and all the spirituality that you want to try to have the kind of life that you envision for yourself. However, you might find that it just simply doesn't work, even though the insights are very powerful, because you probably have blocks within you that won't allow that to happen. But he says, as you can start to remove these blocks, then you can go back to those books if you want to use them for inspiration, and you'll begin to see that they can begin to work. Does that kind of make sense as you explain sync creation?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
We do have some CDs within sync creation where they take you to an altered state of consciousness, place where we say, okay, this is a communication point to the quantum and energy in every cell, through all the systems of the body, through your unconscious, your emotional body, your higher self, and try to get all of us, complex creatures, cooperating to manifest X, Y, or Z. That can be quite powerful, much like hypnosis can be, to just melt through some blocks. But other times, you really need to work with somebody individually, maybe even using their intuition, to see the blind spots for you. An example I'm thinking of is a woman who was a good manifester, but she wanted to take it to a whole nother level. And she got in touch when she was working with somebody individually with a memory that she would call a past life memory, where she was a little girl in a village and all she wanted to be was the high priestess. And when she became the high priestess, the first day that she was the priestess, they cut her heart out and used it as a human sacrifice. Really put a deep program in her of be careful what you want, you might just get it. Working with that, even if it's just a model or a symbolic thought versus having to be an actual past life, the person was able to have her able to reframe that and realize it might be safe and good to get what you want, and then you could try with smaller things and see if the results were positive and gradually move up to the more important dreams that she had, so she was able to make progress. And because of that, we put 3 individual mentoring sessions with a coach as part of the Sync Creation course. A good friend might be able to do the same thing, but it's really helpful to have somebody skilled in all these techniques, very familiar with the tools, and then working with you very carefully to see what your individual blocks are that might be kind of massive. Sometimes it's religious training.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting, Dr. Gallenberger, is a couple of weeks ago we had some guests on our program who spent 30 years, and they're still doing it today, in helping people at what would be called grief recovery. And so they sent us a book. It was called the Grief Recovery Handbook. And the book was fairly unassuming. So I decided to start reading that. As soon as I cracked open the first page, I found myself just pulled into this, and at such an incredible rate. Because at first when you think of grief, you think of someone who has died or something like that. And that was one element, but he was talking, or what they were talking about, is how we all suffer from losses.
Yeah.
At so many different levels, and that's what they were talking about in the book. And I thought, this is something I have never read or heard about before. And it really started triggering a lot of memories and so forth. And what they were explaining is that if you don't properly grieve those losses, if you just don't do it, those begin to create the blocks, and that you'll find yourself continuing those same losses, those same cycles. And they show, and they have a program for how you begin to go in and you can clean all that, because a lot of us tend to live in our past to create our future, and yet we're stuck in the present trying to balance those two things. And you can see how when you're talking about sync creation and the Hemi-Sync CDs, to be able to get in there and kind of cleanse a lot of that out, those blocks, that you'll find yourself moving in the direction and having what it is that you want.
I haven't read that book, but it sounds like a good one. I would definitely agree. I would almost put it like over time, it's almost natural to get a bit disheartened. We have losses like somebody dying who was a friend. We get disappointments in not getting the grade we wanted or the job we wanted,
or losing the job or the loved one, or moving and losing friends. But what was interesting, I wanted to point out too about it, and this I would think goes really hand in hand in some ways of the work that you do, is that they talk about the social conditioning that we have around grieving. And that became incredible just by itself, and you can see how that would actually create a lot of blocks as well, that social conditioning and the cliches surrounding, when you lose something, oh, don't worry, it's meant for you to have something better, so that wasn't good enough,
So I guess one of the most powerful negative forces there is shame.
Right.
And if, indeed, our cultural thing can be, if you're a boy like I am, even crying because you skinned your knee as a kid, you're grieving the fact that you fell off the swing. And you're immediately told, big boys don't cry.
Right.
And so because you feel like crying, it generates shame.
It's just amazing.
I study gambling a lot because, I go out to Las Vegas with these groups. And I read an interesting book, The History of Gambling. And back in the 1700s in the French court, when they would gamble, They were supposed to put their entire estate and everything they owned on the table, and whether they won or lost, they weren't supposed to break a smile or react in any way. That was considered the manly thing to do.
Oh, my goodness.
So if you go over to the casinos in Europe, my wife and I were in Baden-Baden last year when I did a workshop in Germany. It's very much like that still, suit and tie, and nobody cheers, nobody laughs, nobody breaks a smile. Everything is very much contained.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how we're supposed to go through life, no matter how we bumped in British culture that we've inherited, if you will.
No, that's too much. We can't allow that anymore. That's not what our show's about. It's about getting people to get what they want. Be happy, mostly.
Yeah, that'd be good, huh?
Now,
so
go ahead and...
You allow yourself to grieve, and then I'm sure that book says that eventually you have to let go. But you have, the emotion for as long as it's needed, and you don't dwell in it, and then you move on.
Mm-hmm. And Hemi-Sync certainly supports that message, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and the Sync Creation course as well.
Part of what the Hemi-Sync is doing is, because it's causing such deep relaxation, the pain doesn't hurt as much like at the dentist. If you could relax, procedures won't be as difficult. So if you're feeling fear with whatever pain you have, fear of further loss, it complicates it considerably. So if you can take away the fear, if you can relax, if you can open up and surrender and let it flow through you, you can get through these blocks much more quickly.
Mm-hmm. It seems I had heard that when you take a step toward God, He takes 10,000 steps toward you. You can imagine when you begin to want to manifest your desires and your dreams, and you can clear yourself. And as you said earlier in the program, the ability to also be sincerely grateful. And that sometimes you see people in the world today, they just don't seem very grateful even about the simplest things. But if you could do that, you could see how your goal, your desire, your dream gets exciting. It would send out a vibrational energy that makes it just come to you that much faster.
Yes, and we do lose, I guess, just to function, but we lose perspective of miracle very quickly. The miracle of your own hand, and if your hand was somehow impaired, then you would not take it for granted. I've been guilty. I fly all over the world, and I'll be in an airport and a flight is delayed 2 hours across the country, and I get kind of bent out of shape. People are waiting for me at the other end. But compared to taking a wagon train across the country, so I should still be grateful for the miracle of modern transportation. So you give the disappointment a minute or two to express itself, and then you move back into gratitude. And then when you do that, you'll get upgraded to first class or something nice will happen.
Well, this is a very exciting course. I would encourage people, especially as they're approaching middle age and they've had possibly created a lot of blocks and they're finding themselves frustrated, maybe starting a business because they want their personal freedom, but it's just not working out for them. They could be widowed or widowers or perhaps divorced, or the kids are leaving the house, and they want to just, see a different life, something that's more enjoyable for them, but they just can't seem to make it happen. I can see how something such as the Hemi-Sync and the Sync Creation course it's a home study course that people can do that would help to resolve a lot of things, to help them get to where they want to be.
That's one very common application. People will call and say, I'm kind of at a life change point. And another one is for people starting out. And they kind of go, I want to start off on a good direction. I'm not quite sure what I want to do. I know I got some energy drags that I want to get rid of, things like that. But as you mentioned, that kind of in a passages sense, whenever we're at a big transition point of our life, it's good to review things, get some new tools, and really apply our skills to form a really good direction.
Go ahead and give a website where people can find out more information about this.
Sure. My own website is www. and then sync, which is SYNC, and the word creation, CREATION.com. So www.synccreation.com. plenty more information there about the Sync Creation Home Study course. Also, if people are interested in general about the Hemi-Sync process, there's lots of good data on how it works within the brain, as well as a catalog of 200 titles at www.hemi-sync.com. So that's HEMI-SYNC.com, Hemi-Sync.
I like the title, too, of Sync Creation because it reminds me of synchronicity. Yeah. And I remember as a child, before we got all those blocks and crazy belief systems into us, that it felt that easy, and it actually is that easy, surprisingly so. But, yeah, until you can kind of clear what's that stuff, it seems almost impossible and can make somebody even feel cynical about it. But it's true, I believe.
Well, that's one of the signs for me, definitely, that you're, quote, in the zone, you're moving along in the right direction as you have these incredible synchronicities come along. And I remember one time somebody said to me that they use a feather as their sign of yes. And I walked out of the building after hearing that thinking, could that really work? And a feather fell in my hand.
I have one even stranger for you than that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sitting at home, and this just blew my mind. And I'm watching this show that had been out for a lot of years, and the first time I was exposed to it was actually earlier this year. It was called That 70s Show.
Okay.
So I'm watching an episode, and it happened to be a cat fight between two of the girls that were fighting over the same guy, and it was literally the cat fight.
Huh?
All of a sudden outside, I'm hearing this cat just making this loud, kind of a sound.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, I can't believe this. And just as they were about to cat fight in the show, that's exactly what was going on outside in my yard, and I'd never seen anything like that before.
Very cool.
I called my wife down, and I said, you're not going to believe this. I just found it oddly strange, but that's the kind of strange synchronicity that kind of keeps you engaged into the mysteries of life, I guess.
It sort of says that the universe has got a sense of humor. And
very much so.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Joe Gallenberger, it was a pleasure to have you on our program again, and syncreation.com is the website where people can find out more about how they can manifest more of what they want. Do you have something also in the future that you might be enhancing this with, or things that people, tools
I
people
can mention, I do have the Vegas Adventure Workshop where we go and play with this in casinos.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, we have just a real lots of fun. I've done over 40 of those groups, and we just came back from one, and it's almost guaranteed that people have big smiles on their faces and get real excited. We're not trying to kill the casino and make tons of money. It's not, for professional gamblers, but energy workers, massage therapists, folks interested in energy and manifestation, really have a blast out there seeing it work as a team at a dice table or individually with the slot machines. And then I do workshops in this area of sync creation, both in the United States and in Europe. So I'll be headed in a couple days to Portugal, a really nice place to do one. And then one after that, I'll be down in Tallahassee and then down in Salt Lake. So if you go to the website, you can see information on those kind of things if you'd rather do a workshop than to get a home study. I do have a little taste available through Manifesting with Hemi-Sync. It's a 2-CD set that you can get through the .com website or my website, Sync Creation, and it just has a little bit more of a talk by me and a couple introductory Hemi-Sync exercises on it to give you a taste of this. And gosh knows where I'll do next. We'll see.
Well, very good.
This area so much. It's really it's fun and it helps you see how the universe works, and it seems to be positive and helpful to people. So I keep looking for something new to do in that area.
Oh, very good. Well, Dr. Joe Gallenberger, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
You're welcome, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Very much so.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, also I want to thank our guests for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50. And sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. We'll also have more information there about what sync creation is and how you can get started. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Daniel Davis. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Remember, live your day past halfway.